Today's story begins in Assam, a beautiful state in northeastern India known for its breathtaking scenery, rich culture, and lively traditions. On August 29th, 22, a 30-year-old woman named Vandana Kalita walked into the Nunmati police station in Guwahati district. She reported that her husband and mother-in-law had been missing for several days. Vandana said she had searched everywhere, but couldn't find them. As she spoke, she broke down in tears, the police recorded the missing persons report based on Van's count and offered her some sympathy before sending her home. But they didn't take the case very seriously. At first, it wasn't until later that Vandana had to approach the CID Criminal Investigation Department for a proper investigation. When the case was finally solved 6 months later, the remains of Vandana's mother-in-law were discovered in pieces deep within a gorge. Some reports even suggest that her husband's remains were never found. The big question was, who was behind all this? This story plays out like a killing thriller, but it's not fiction. It's all too real, believe me. This case is anything but ordinary. It's the stuff of nightmares. But what's the real story behind this? What's the truth? We'll explore all of it in today's video, so let's start from the beginning. But before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to do so. Once in Guwahati, Assam, where a small family of two lived quietly. Shankar Day, a strong-willed mother, and her son Amarti. This mother and son weren't just ordinary folks. They were quite well off. Shankari owned a good amount of property, including 4 houses. She lived in one, while renting out the other 3, providing a comfortable life for her and her son. Life took a turn when Amarti met a young woman named Vandana Kalita. Vandana came from a respectable family, and what started as a simple friendship between them soon blossomed into love. But as is often the case, love doesn't always come easy. Both Amaro's mother and Van's family were against their relationship. The disapproval from their families didn't stop them, though. Against all odds, they decided to get married, choosing love over family opposition. In time, as often happens, both families softened and eventually accepted the marriage, and so time continued to pass. Even after several years of Van's marriage, she and her husband still hadn't had a child. Despite this, their relationship remained strong. Not only that, but although her mother-in-law initially expressed displeasure about their relationship, over time the bond between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law grew so strong that her mother-in-law helped Vandana become a gym trainer. She motivated Vandana to move forward and provided significant financial assistance. However, during this period, it was reported that her mother-in-law stopped helping Vandana. The exact reason for this isn't known, but Shankari Day decided to separate from her son and daughter-in-law, moving into another house. She owned a 5-story building. She lived on 1 floor herself, while renting out the other 4. Meanwhile, Amar Jyoti Day had to start working harder, as all the rent from the building was credited to his mother's various accounts. Shankari Day's brother, who was also Amar Jyoti's uncle, managed all of these accounts. Gradually, communication between Shankari Day and her son and daughter-in-law became minimal, and time went on. Then came August 29th, 2022, the day I mentioned at the beginning. Even though the police had been actively searching for them after 2 months of effort, there was still no sign of either of them. And October came. During the investigation, a man who claimed to be Amaro Day's cousin went to the Nunmati police station and filed a report. He suspected that Vandana Kalita, Amar Jyoti's wife, was involved in the disappearance of Amar Jyoti and Shankari Day. His suspicion was based on the fact that money was being withdrawn from Shankari Day's account. As a few more months passed, Vandana Kalita visited the same police station again to inquire about the progress of the investigation into her mother-in-law and husband's disappearance. The police sent her back, stating that the search was ongoing, but that they had not found any leads yet. At this point, Vandana decided it was best to leave her in-laws' house and return to her parental home, as no one else was left in her in-laws' house, so she moved back to her parental home. As time continued to pass, February 2023 arrived, but the police still hadn't made any progress in locating them. It was then that Vandana felt the police were not conducting a proper investigation. She decided to appeal to the Criminal Investigation Department. This time, Vandana herself filed another report, expressing her suspicion that her uncle Shankar Dey's brother might be behind the disappearance of her husband and mother-in-law, since money was once again withdrawn from Shankari Dey's account totaling ARS approximately 200 USD, and since Shankar's brother managed all the finances, it was possible that he might have committed the crime out of greed. Now the police had two conflicting reports in their investigation. One report was from Amarjyoti Dey's cousin, who suspected Vandana, and the other was from Vandana herself, who suspected Shankari Dey's brother. However, these were just suspicions, and the truth was yet to be uncovered, a truth that would shock not only the general public but even the police themselves when Vandana filed another report at the same police station on February 14, 2023. The police began to suspect her more and decided to keep a close eye on her actions. They even started monitoring her mobile phone. At the same time, the police carefully reviewed the records of ATM withdrawals from Shankari Dey's account, paying close attention to the specific dates and times when the money was taken out. They also gathered CCTV footage from all the ATMs in the area for those time periods as they meticulously examined the CCTV footage. The police made a startling discovery. The person withdrawing them, wasn't shot Sherry Dey's brother, as they might have initially thought, but their daughter-in-law, Vandana. This finding greatly increased the police's suspicion of Vandana, prompting them to keep an even closer watch on her every move in addition to their ongoing investigation. The police began questioning the neighbors living near the house where Vandana resided with her husband. Through these conversations, the police uncovered something unusual. A few days after her husband and mother-in-law had disappeared, Vandana was seen burning something on the roof of her house. At the time, the neighbors assumed she was simply disposing of some trash, so they didn't think much of it. However, the police couldn't easily search the roof for evidence, as nearly 6 months had passed since the incident. By now, Vandana had clearly become a person of interest in the investigation. The neighbors also mentioned that two individuals were seen frequently visiting her house, though it remained unclear who these people were. Without wasting any time, the police took Vandana into custody and showed her the CCTV footage, confronting her with evidence of the ATM withdrawals and questioning why she had blamed Amarjyoti Dey's uncle for the transactions. This further intensified their suspicion of her involvement in the disappearance of her husband and mother-in-law. In response, Vandana admitted, "Yes, I did withdraw the money, but that doesn't mean I'm behind their disappearance. I blamed him because he was in charge of all the finances. I made that move so that I wouldn't be caught." However, Vandana was only giving surface-level explanations. The deeper truth hadn't yet come out. Next, the police questioned Vandana for 2 days, putting a lot of pressure on her. Eventually, the truth she'd been hiding for 6 months was revealed. Vandana had been keeping this secret while confidently challenging the police's investigation, believing that no one would ever suspect her, and for a while, she was correct. In the beginning, Vandana pretended to assist the police in their search for her missing husband and mother-in-law. But her deception was beginning to unravel. Initially, Vandana and her husband seemed to have a good relationship. Even though they didn't have a child, their bond remained strong. However, things began to change after Vandana became a gym trainer. During this time, she met a taxi driver named DTI Deka, and slowly, she began to develop a relationship with him. Dante had a friend named Arup Dey, who sold vegetables for a living, as Vandana and Dante's affair grew more intense. She started inviting Dante to her home whenever her husband was away. It's easy to imagine what might have happened when they were alone together, so there's no need to go into details. Dante's friend Arup also started visiting the house, and it wasn't just these two. Many other men were seen coming to Van's home as well. The situation made it clear that Van's life was taking a very different direction, far from what anyone would have expected. When Van's husband Amarjyoti found out about these activities, it naturally led to fights between them. The arguments were inevitable, and eventually, Amarjyoti decided to divorce Vandana. When Vandana found out that Amarjyoti was planning to divorce her, she became worried that the property in Guwahati owned by Amarjyoti and his mother would slip out of her hands, leaving her with Nothing Vandana wanted both love and money, and driven by this greed she began to devise a plan to eliminate Amar Jyoti and his mother, Shankari Devi, so that she could get everything including the property. According to her plan, Vandana arrived in Guwahati on August 17th, where Shankari Devi used to live in a separate house. Accompanying Vandana was Arup Das. Upon reaching Shankari Devi's house, Vandana and Arup Dasas found that she was alone. They sat with her engaging in conversation, but soon seizing the right moment, they overpowered Shankari Devi and strangled her, leading to her death. With Shankari Devi now dead, Vandana and Arup Das started thinking about how to dispose of the body together. They dismembered the body into small pieces, put them in polythene bags, and stored them in the refrigerator at Shankari Devi's house before returning to their own homes. Meanwhile, unaware of his mother's death, Amar Jyoti, who was away on work, returned home on August 21st. He had not been in contact with his mother during this time, as they lived in separate houses and rarely spoke to each other. Amar Jyoti returned home and after a short while goes to his room to rest. After some time, Vandana brings him a glass of juice, which Amar Jyoti drinks while lying down. However, shortly after drinking the juice, Amar Jyoti becomes unconscious because Vandana had mixed a sedative in it. As soon as Amar Jyoti is unconscious, Vandana calls her lover Dangat Dea, who quickly arrives at the house. Together, they strangle Amar Jyoti to death and dismember his body, storing the pieces in the refrigerator. Just as they had done with Shankari Devi, Vandana, with the help of her two friends, had now murdered both her husband and his mother in one day. The dismembered bodies were stored in the fridge, and the trio began planning their next move on how to dispose of the bodies according to the plan. Vandana's two friends arrived at her house on August 23rd. Vandana instructed them to go to Shankari Devi's house and retrieve the dismembered body. Arup Das went to Shankari Devi's house, took the pieces of her body out of the fridge and brought them to Vandana's house. Vandana and Dekathan took out the pieces of Amarat's body from their fridge and loaded both bodies into Arup Das's car. With both mother and son's dismembered bodies in the car, Vandana, Arup Das and Deka drove towards Meghalaya. They reached the mountainous regions of Cherrapunji and disposed of the body parts in different gorges in the hills. After getting rid of the evidence, Vandana returned home and burned her husband's clothes and any other evidence in the furnace, and this fire seemed ordinary to the neighbors. But they had no idea that it was not just any fire. It was burning the evidence of the mother and son's murder. After doing all this, on August 25th, Vandana went to the police station to report her mother-in-law and husband as missing, trying to prove herself innocent. Upon hearing her story, the police reached the location near Cherrapunji in Meghalaya, where Vandana and her friends had disposed of the body parts. The police found pieces of Shankari Devi's body in a plastic bag. Butherhead was missing. Despite an extensive search, the police could not find any part of Amar Jyoti's body. Currently, Guwahati police have Vandana in custody and are continuing their search operation to find the missing body parts. However, all three culprits have been arrested. But Vandana have no regret what she has done. Instead, she was smiling after her arrest. After these events, Van's father made a statement saying that if the accusations were true, his daughter should be sentenced to death and publicly executed. Vandana and her two lovers are currently serving time in jail for their crimes. However, on November 9th, Vandana was granted bail and is now free for the time being. The reasons behind the court's decision to grant her bail are unclear. So friends, this is a true story that deeply shocked and disturbed the community, revealing troubling aspects of human behavior and relationships. I'll be back with another story soon. You can check out my latest story about a girl whose fiancé mysteriously died after their engagement. Until then, take care of yourselves. Thank you.